Welcome to Tell Us Your Story with Dr. Ebony. I am Dr. Ebony. Today's topic is, am I black, blue, or both? Today's guest is someone that many of you know here in the town of Lexington, South Carolina. Town of Lexington Police Chief Terrence Green. Chief Green, welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How about yourself?
Doing real good. Hope your family's doing well.
Yes, they are. Thank you for asking. And yours also.
Yeah, everybody went to work today.
That is always a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, to let some of you all know, Chief Green and I go way back before he was chief and I was doctor. It was so far back, I was a junior in high school. And he was an officer that assisted with the drug abuse resistance education, also known as DARE summer camp. And I was a DARE mentor and camp counselor. Then fast forward about a decade after that, I was hired to be part of Chief Green's team at the town of Lexington Police Department as the site coordinator of Keeping Every Youth Safe, also known as KEYS, where he was my chief for 7 years. So, Chief, before we get too deep into our conversation, I would like to know if you prefer to be referred to as Black, African American, or a person of color.
No preference at all. I've been started off calling me Black, then moved to African American. So I go both ways. I'm a switch hitter. So whichever one I can use, I'll use it. Sometimes I understand why people do it. Some people have traced their roots back to Africa, and I guess they want that lineage, just like Italian Americans, German Americans, those people who have that. But we grew up through the 70s, 80s, and we were told Black was beautiful. Black, be proud of your Blackness. So both go hand in hand with me. So whatever comes off your tongue, I'll go with it.
Okay. All right. That is fair. So for those of you who are wondering why I asked that question, it is simply because all Black people do not come from Africa. And as we as Americans need to start realizing and acknowledging that fact. In addition, it is a personal decision how someone is to be identified. Remember, being politically correct is not always correct. That is why it's always better to ask than to assume. So, Chief Green, when you were growing up, of course, being male and also being Black in South Carolina, when did you know you wanted to be a law enforcement officer?
I always repeat the story of my mom telling me that from the smallest, I always said I wanted to be a cop. And she said, why? She said, because I told her back then, cops will never lose their job. You're always going to have criminals, people going to go to jail. So I have a job. So I guess that stuck with me. But I remember being in Georgetown, a deputy who worked for Georgetown Police Department. And at the time, Georgetown Sheriff Department, at the time, they used their own personal cars. They had to put the blue lights on their old personal cars. And he had like a 1980 Lincoln Mark something. And it was a two-door. So I was able to see people go to jail in luxury. And I was like, that's a cool job. So I think that kind of stuck with it. But I think what resonate is just trying to help people. I think I just gravitate towards law enforcement because it's supposed to be a profession, you're supposed to be helping people along the way. A lot of people see law enforcement as, like it says, enforcing the law. But I think in that in between, I think law enforcement here is supposed to be helping people along the way. You're supposed to be building that partnership. Supposed to be, there. You with that person in the middle, with that thin blue line when stuff go wrong. And I think that's what gravitates me towards law enforcement. It's always been, how can I make somebody's day better? So I think that's what got me into it.
Okay. So after you made your career choice, did you receive any opposition from your family, your friends, and even within the law enforcement community?
No, I mean, I had a lot of my family said, great, we got a law enforcement person in the family. It was encouraged. I had an uncle who was a NYPD officer. I had another person in the family who was a CIA agent. So we had law enforcement in there. And, as I grew up back in the day, we saw law enforcement as, someone to help us. We didn't grow in areas where, some police departments, some people unfortunately had the experience of being around dirty cops, seeing different things that go on. But of course, you're told, this might happen. But when I took the oath, all my family members come now. I had people calling me. Did I lose some friends? Probably yes. Probably the ones who were doing something illegal, like smoking weed. I probably lost those friends, but not back then. But I mean, I didn't lose. I didn't have any pushback from going in the law enforcement field. Everybody thought, hey, that's a noble thing to do. We need more African Americans, blacks in the field, because at the time they were minimum.
Mm-hmm. Being Black, and of course, being a male, being in law enforcement, how have you been able to have your entire self be in this position while also serving and protecting your community?
Well, when I put the uniform on, I always tell people see blue. They don't see black, they don't see what's my background, they don't see education status. Black people, white people, everybody see blue first. So I think, people, when they see me, they go, hey, this guy's here to help. This is my impression. Now, sometimes you're gonna have some people go, you're working for the man, this, and that. But I never saw it that way. I'm here to help you. Let's get on our way. Let's push on. But I never saw that that I was black in the uniform. I always saw myself as blue in the uniform, because you had certain people go, okay, you're a cop. Either you're here to put me in jail, you're here to help me. People go, that's their perspective of it. And that's how I saw people saw me. So they saw me as blue, not as black. That's the way I look, how I perceive when people when I come on, especially people who need help. They go like, okay, help is here. What do I need to do? What are the steps I need to go to the next level? And unfortunately, sometimes people have to be incarcerated to have the situation resolved. But I never had the, now take me out of the uniform, and when I put my clothes on, I knew that I was a black guy. I know I was a black man in America, in South Carolina, because you have several instances that you go, okay, this has happened. So I know that. But when you're in the uniform in your car, I totally saw, people saw me as blue.
Okay. All right. And I'm glad you kind of touched on that, because that's actually going into my next question. But first, I'm going to preface it with, in the history of the town of Lexington, South Carolina, I haven't been able to find any record of any other person of color or Black person or African American to hold the title of the chief of police. So throughout your time as chief, you mentioned during your last comment that when you're out of uniform, you know what it's like to be a Black man in America, definitely in South Carolina. So what are some examples of how you've been treated in and out of your uniform? Besides, when people see you come to help them, they see you as being blue and just there to help. So what are some other examples of things that have happened to you being in and out of uniform?
So just, out of uniform, had several, things that occur. They still occur today, if I go through, I remember coming into Lexington, I was looking for a belt. I don't know what I was looking for. And I saw the prevention guy in a store. and he was like following me. I was like, well, he's following me, and he just kept following me. And I went around. I didn't pay no attention to him. I went and got my item. He just kept following me, and I was like, you know what? I guarantee. I thought he was probably thought I was trying to steal something. So the next day, I came in my uniform to see if uh, he would recognize me. He didn't recognize me. That's why I said,
Wow.
people see blue and not black, when you're out of the uniform. Or occasionally you're walking down the street, somebody's in their vehicle, you hear the doors lock, you go
Mm.
like, why are you locking doors for, on me? If you only knew I was a cop, I'm here to help you. So, you see those things, and, I tell my kids when you go to Walmart, don't put your hoodies on. "Oh, why, Dad? I said, some people are not raised like us, not to judge people on what they're wearing or whatever. I always tell a story here, me and my wife will go buy a car. And the first question they always ask me is, we got to check your credit first.
Mm.
And, some of my Caucasian friends and my white friends, they're like, we never ask that question. We always go to the thing. So I told them, those are different things we face on a basis, through our lives, and still today, anytime we go, and purchase a big item, that's one of the major questions we're asked. We got to check your credit first. So
Mm.
those are the things what you deal with that a lot of people on the other side don't see those things.
True. Very true. So it's been over a year since the murder of George Floyd Jr. What, if any, effect did that have on you as a Black male and also as a law enforcement officer?
So the way I look at that, you say as a Black male, I looked at it as being a human being. How can somebody treat another human being like that? I think we need to take the color away from it. And if those were, I always wonder if those were two white guys there, how would people react to it? But I took for me, I looked at it and I said, first of all, that's just inhumane. That's murder. That's just nothing law enforcement is taught. This guy is psycho. He needs to be put under the jail. And that's what happened. It's sorry that we had to tear down Minneapolis and, the whole United States and all over the world. But, these things have been happening for years. That's not the first time that probably happened in Minnesota. And somebody's been complaining. So things kind of boil, like a crock pot, it just keep going up and then it stops boiling and it bursts open. So it's not the first time that happened. I tell people that, Ice Cube, NWA, whatever you said about their music, they rapped about that in the early 90s and they were telling people, hey, cops are beating us up, this, and that. But we didn't listen. You try to use art to tell us, and we didn't listen back then. So these things happen for a reason, and it boiled over, and you got what you got. Now, I wish that from this that we would have saw a lot more police reform, a lot more going into the police, a lot more going into looking for police candidates, a lot more going into, hey, we need maybe a well-educated person to be in this field. In the state of South Carolina, a barber or cosmetologist have more hours to get their license than a police officer who you give a gun, you give a badge, you give a car. And we're the only people in the United States, not even the military, that can take away your civil rights at any time. So I always thought that more reform. I know they were trying to do something and it died. Hopefully that we don't leave it like that. But I think from the George Floyd incident, I think a lot of people went and said, hey, we need to change some tactics that we do. And I thought, some of the stuff was good. Now, we got a lot of backlash that we're facing now. And the sad thing about the backlash is you got people that are going, I don't want to be in law enforcement. I don't want that, all the people yelling at me, and I don't want all this going on. I'd rather do something else. So that's what I think that's the backlash we're receiving right now.
Okay. During the protest that followed George Floyd's death, somewhere the chant "defund the police" was coined. And the phrase spread, and unfortunately, it became a campaign slogan to either support the idea or as a reason not to vote for an opponent. What phrase should replace hashtag defund the police for a more accurate depiction of the issues that need to be addressed between law enforcement and the communities in which they serve?
Well, the defund the police slogan, that whole mantra, was crazy because you and I know when they defund the police, they're not going to defund it in your well affluent areas. They're going to go in the minority areas where it's needed. And now that you're seeing in some of these areas, you have the less affluent neighborhoods are saying, no, we want the police because they saw what is going on. More crime is going in the community. More stuff is going on in their community, and they are feeling the effects of it. This defund the police. Yeah, it was a great little slogan that people came up to try to go after the police. And, I think it shouldn't have been defund the police, but hey, let's start taking more stuff off the police. Why do the police have to deal with the mentally ill? Why does the police, if you think about it, the police can be a teacher, a DSS worker, a mental officer. They got to be, sometimes they got to take people to the doctor. Sometimes they got to go to the grocery store. So you want the police to do all these things. You want the police to be there for the kids after school program.
Mm-hmm.
I think what they should have done, they should have said, let's take some of these responsibilities off of these police, let them do what they do, and let's start doing programs for the mentally ill. Let's try to put more money towards mental ill. For some reason here in America, we do not want to spend money in mental illness. I don't know why. We have a lot of people who are affected by it. We deal with it, and they want us just to throw people in jail, and this is a revolving cycle. Homelessness, another issue we got to deal with. Homelessness is not a crime, but guess who get called? The police. Like we can do anything. There's nothing we can do. Homeless is not a crime. Homeless is an act. So I think that instead of the defund police, I think it should have been, hey, let's take some responsibilities from the police and let's keep them where they at. Let them do their job, but let's fund fund the mental health. Let's fund why people are homeless. Let's fund after school care for all. Let's fund what other stuff we do. All the other stuff we do, let's fund it instead of taking money away from it because we're stretched thin now.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that made sense.
It did. It made perfect sense. And you're preaching to the choir on this. Especially with the social work background. I understand completely.
Yeah.
And of course, with me having had the privilege of working in your department, I can personally say that I witnessed firsthand your commitment to using community policing. So how do you define community policing for those that don't understand, and how it should work within neighborhoods?
Well, community policing, if you think about it, is the community policing themselves. If you just look at the whole picture, if we would allow the community to police themselves and everybody take responsibility, we wouldn't need as much law enforcement we need. Without the community, the police can't function, and without the police, the community can't function. So it goes a hand-in-hand bridge. It's a big partnership that we have to go back and forth. Community policing is not the police coming in and solving your problems. It's the citizens solving their problems. It's not us taking control, because we could come in, solve the problem, and leave. But, sometimes we come in and all we do is a quick fix. We need the citizens to fix the problem. Why is there a drug problem? Why are we letting drugs being dealt in front of our street and nobody is calling?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we allowing the neighbor to hit his wife or his wife to hit the husband and we're not calling? What's going on? Why are the kids not going to school? We come in only for a few 30 minutes and we try to solve everybody's problems. You can't do that. The citizens have to be a part of the community. The citizen has to be the problem solvers. And until we get that down pat, it won't. Why is drugs so rampant? We need to ask those questions. But why is this alcohol abuse, DUIs? It all comes back to the citizen. And if the citizen would step up and play their role, I think that's community policing to me. But what people want is the police department to come in, to have these programs, to make them feel good, and then we leave, and the problem is still there. So I think in order for us to go to the next level, we need to have the citizen. And I think here in Lexington, we have gone to the next level because we have citizens that says, hey, this is the problem. This is what we need your help from the police department. We as citizens going to do this. And that's how we solve those problems here in Lexington. And I think we do a great job doing it.
Yes. And I'm not just telling you this because I live in the town or that I was a former employee. It's very true.
So it has to be a very active, fluid motion between the citizens and the police department. If not, if it's just one-sided, you got a mess. Yeah. And that's what we're seeing across this nation.
Very good point. So in the intro, I mentioned that we work together with Keys. So how Keys came to be, your department partnered with a grassroots organization known as the Lexington Improvement League and with the municipality of the town of Lexington. And from that, the partnership formed, or I should say reformed, a program that was already in existence called Keeping Every Youth Safe. But within that partnership, this program became a state and national award-winning program. And it was for after school. And it was designed to stop the rise in juvenile delinquency by providing a safe haven and educational support for youth ages 5 to 13 that were either classified as latchkey and at-risk juvenile delinquents. So what do you think were the ingredients for Keys' award-winning success?
Well, I thought Keys was way before its time. During that time, you rarely had any schools, any places doing after-school care. It was one of the rarest forms of after-school care that it started. But I think what made Keys so great is that you had a government entity, a police department, you had retired teachers, we had people like you, and the kids all working together, because you and I know if a kid is not reading by the 3rd grade, he's destined for the jails and the Department of Corrections. So anytime you can get education, you can raise children up in the education field, that's the less likelihood being in the criminal justice system. So if, I don't know why we don't see this in America. If we would pour our money, pour our talents in the Department of Education with kids, we wouldn't have to put too much money in the criminal justice field. So that's why I think that Keys did real well. That's why Keys got all those awards, because people knew it was the right formula to keeping kids on track. So, could we do it over again? I don't know if we can do it over again, because there's so many other avenues out there now. There's so many after school programs. The kids are so much busier, but I just think it just was a great program that I thought we let slip away through our fingers, and the people who decided, hey, we want to stop this, didn't see the future. They didn't see the success. They were just looking at the dollars right then. They didn't see that the dollars would, the money we spent now on a kid in the future will be 10 times more back, because he'll be a productive citizen. So that's my take on how great the Keys program was.
Okay. And I did not pay him to say anything like that, just to let you all know. And you kind of took my follow-up question to know if there would be a Keys 2.0, but you mentioned the kids have access to so many different programs. What are some of the community programs in Lexington right now that you would recommend to some families?
Well, after school programs go from, football, from different sporting activities. Now kids, they leave from school, either they get tutored, then they go to get tutored on their sport. We have kind of gone to another level. Even if it's not sports, they're being going to after school for either instrument to get better on. It's just so many places that that attract kids. It might be, I saw one place where you could take your kid and they can start to learn how to code for computer programming. Wow. So trying to compete with those different avenues, because now I think, we're going to get our education, but we need to start looking at the future. What I'm going to do, what track I'm going to take, and what field I want to do, be in. I think kids are doing that. I think parents are planning for their future. I remember my kids going to the mathnasium, and I don't want to give them a plug because they're not giving you any money, but my kids were making A's in math, but they still went to mathnasium. So the next year they had a step on math subjects. So they already knew what was coming in for the next upcoming year in the summer. That's what they did. So that's why I think that it's so hard to compete with other programs right now, because there's so many other programs, from sports to music. You see where you can play an instrument and be the best at that. Look at Gray Academy. That's academy, you got a school, but their main focus is sports. So there's Science Academy. There's just so many different things that would be hard to compete with after school programs here.
Right. So we have mentioned earlier, I'm going to kind of circle back to community policing. What advice would you give communities that are trying to start community policing programs?
Okay, the first thing is you got to want to do it. First, for a community to want a community policing program, the law enforcement entity does not have to start it. The community needs to start it. They got to have interests. They got to know what are their goals and objectives. And when you call that police officer, that community action team, they know, okay, this is a problem. This is what we can supply. But we need input from the citizen. What is your goals and objectives? So the first step, I think, is having a group of people who want to do it. And don't wait till a problem happens. Do it when there's nothing going on. That's the perfect time. So when you should be out, when you form that group and there's nothing going on and you have the police on your side, when something happens, you know each other. Because what happened is we have an incident that happened, people, emotions get involved, they start yelling at the police saying, you're not doing your job. And, we're thinking, well, you didn't do your job because you're not policing yourself. Right. So I think in times you need to have that plan in place when there's nothing going on. But we as humans, we don't think that way. We tend to react when something goes bad. So I think that's the most important. Have a goal, have your goals and objectives, have a set of people, have a group that, yes, we want to get involved. You can't just go in halfway. And what makes this work is having a police department that is willing to meet you more than halfway to solve what's going on in your community.
Right. So what advice would you give those that are different ethnic groups or have different ethnic backgrounds or cultural backgrounds that are minorities? What advice would you give them if they want to start a career in law enforcement?
I would say the same thing as somebody wanting to go be an engineering, a doctor, a lawyer. Know your craft. If you want to go into a different in law enforcement, first of all, you got to know what's in law enforcement. Why do I want to do it? What field in law enforcement I want to go to? Study your craft first, just like you would if you want to be a lawyer. I always tell people, a lot of people say you don't need a degree to go in law enforcement. A lot of departments are requiring degrees right now. So they want people to study. They want people to be well-rounded. They want people who've been around different ethnic backgrounds. So when they do approach get that job, only person they know is just Black people, or only person they know is Indian American people. No, they know a well-diverse background of people. Another very important item is communication skills. Communication skills in writing, those go in hand because you can't text your way out of it. You can't call your way out of it. You can't Snapchat your way out of it. You can't Facebook your way out of it. When you get in a call, you have to talk. So I always tell my officers that the most deadliest weapon they have is their tongue. They will use their tongue more often than any other weapon they have, we give them. So if they can communicate, that is something that will go a long way. So study your craft, go to school. I mean, if it's just a 2-year degree, get something behind you, learn to communicate well, learn to write well. And now the technology that we're using in the car, you have to have some computer savvy skills to get around in there because of the different software programs we use in the car. It's just like a big office now. I would also tell people to get to know your police department. Get to know your police department in your neighborhood. If you want to be a police officer, go to different agencies and do ride-alongs to see if that's what you really want to do. Because a lot of people get in this field and they go like, well, I didn't know it was going to be that. I didn't know I had to do this. I didn't know I have to go to this call. I would ride around with different departments, from your big departments like this Lexington County Sheriff Department, Richland, City of Columbia, to your smaller departments, Irmo, out medium-sized, KC. You can ride with anybody and you'll be able to say, if this is for me. And that should tell you. Mm-hmm. Do an internship with them.
Yes, or get a job working with them as a civilian, and then have the chief constantly ask you, don't you want to be in law enforcement? Don't you want to be a sworn officer? Yeah. I heard that a few times. So now on to the most important and humanizing questions of the interview. Mm-hmm. And these questions are about music. So how I had to come up with a music question simply because of mama. My mama. Yeah. So what is your favorite song that represents you?
I can't put one song down. There's so many songs out there from different genres to say one song. I would discredit all the artists out there. I like Jackson 5, Michael Jackson, Frank, Beverly and Mays. I like the Rolling Stones. I like, who else I like? I like Elton John. So each person have a song that you go, oh, when you hear it, you go like, I remember what I was doing, when I first heard that song. So to say I have a favorite song, I think I got eras of favorite songs, because I think the songs from the 70s to the 90s, that was the best music. I don't know what they're singing now, but I can't even understand it. But you got some great music like, what's the song with Leave the Door Open by Pac and
you're talking about, what is it, Sonic? It's got Bruno Mars and
Bruno Mars, like Bruno Mars. Everything Bruno Mars is great. I think Beyonce is awesome, but it's just a different genre, of music. I mean, you have people who can really sing, and just to say one song, I can't do that. I'll discredit. I'll discredit my past.
So you're taking the political route on this one and saying, I like it all.
I like it all.
Especially between the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Yeah. Early 2000s is good too, but the 70s, 80s, if you got XM, you turn on soul, it's real good. Those were some good music. They paint a picture. They didn't just say it all out there. They made you imagine, they didn't think. Now we sing, we tell you everything we want to do,
No imagination.
No imagination. Exactly.
Now for the second question, and try to give me one song or two or three. I just kind of give me something to work with. What song do you believe best represents law enforcement?
You see, I can't pick one because when I take the uniform, and a lot of people tell you, when I'm, you're a cop forever, 24 hours, da da da. Now, when I go home, I take that badge off. I don't want to hear nothing about law enforcement. I don't want to see no cop shows. I don't look at cop shows. I don't want to hear nothing about a cop. My wife, you want to look at this? Nope, got too much cop in it. So I don't have the typical bad boys. I hate that song, So I don't have a blues song. You got a law enforcement song? I got Cameron here with me, but I just go. Well, maybe I shot the sheriff.
Okay.
I don't know if the sheriff would know me. I like the sheriff.
I'm like, y'all might have to have a conversation after this.
I don't have a law enforcement. I don't want to ring with law enforcement. I mean, just maybe because when I'm off, I'm off. I like to relax and don't think about law enforcement.
I hear you. Yeah, everybody can agree with that one. Once you off the clock, you off the clock.
I'm off the clock. Yeah.
Well, Chief Green, thank you for your time and for telling us your story. To all of you, thank you for watching. Take care, and may there be peace, love, understanding, and social justice for all.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.